Thank you. Wow. Good evening and welcome everyone to the Kickoff Leaders Lounge of the 2014-15 FWE program year, an exclusive evening with Joe Segal. My name is Lisa Nimacek and I'm the General Manager of FWE, and it is truly our honor to host the amazing Joe Segal with all of you here today in the Chartwell Room at the Four Seasons Hotel, a very special place for Mr. Segal. And we are thrilled to have many of Mr. Segal's family members here this evening. So happy to have you here today. Each year, FWE helps over 1,500 women entrepreneurs through education, mentorship, connections, and more, encouraging them to become wildly successful. But as you know, success takes a lot of hard work, and it ain't easy. And that's why FWE is working tirelessly to expand the reach of our services. Later this fall, actually next month, we're headed up to Prince George to run a one-day intensive educational program to support women entrepreneurs in northern BC. And later on, we're looking forward to raising funds for grants for our E-Series program next April so that we can bring women from across Canada to Vancouver for our 3-day intensive educational program. Our annual fundraising gala, the Odlum Brown FWE Gala, is going to be held on Monday. You're all taking notes, right? Monday, February the 16th, 2015 at the Fairmont Waterfront Hotel. And let me tell you, this is an event not to be missed. We're going to be celebrating new media, and our special guest speakers include Ryan Holmes of Hootsuite, Kirsten Stewart, the head of Twitter Canada, and Michelle Romanov. She is a young serial tech entrepreneur who recently sold one of her companies to Groupon. So, an announcement will be going out shortly. Please mark your calendars, and we would, of course, love to see as many of you there as possible. Now, before we begin, I would like to thank tonight's gold sponsor, RBC, who is a longtime supporter of FWE and the FWE community, so thank you, RBC. As well, thank you to our event partner, PSAV, to our volunteers who worked tirelessly, and Michelle, of course, our program manager. And joining us this evening to introduce Mr. Segal is Graham McLaughlin. He is the Regional President, British Columbia of RBC. So please join me in welcoming Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Thank you very much, and it's great to be here. It's a great honor to be asked to introduce Joe Segal, and also to support this FWE, which is a terrific organization. And I promise to be very brief because I know you came to hear Joe and not a banker at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. So Joe, your accomplishments, if I went through them all, we would have no time to listen to you, both from a business standpoint and also from a philanthropic standpoint. But I did get a few notes about your background here that, if you'll just indulge me, I'll just go through those very quickly. Got to put my glasses on here. Some of you may not know, but Joe is a World War II veteran. He founded Field Stores in 1950, took it public in 1968, buying 240 franchise stores of Marshall Wells. In 1976, he acquired Zellers and doubled the sales at Zellers in 3 years without opening any new stores. And I think there's a chain called Target that might use your skills there, Joe. In 1979, he formed Kingswood Capital and ventured into manufacturing, real estate, and venture capital. He's an investor in Channel M. He has served on the boards of the Hudson's Bay Company, Simon Fraser University, where he served for 12 years and was chancellor at SFU for 6 years. In 1989, he was one of the individuals who participated in establishing the SFU Harbor Center downtown campus, and later in 2002 became a major donor with the SFU Segal Graduate School of Business, where they now host the MBA and Executive MBA programs. Now, those of you who know Joe know that he's quite a philanthropist, has been extremely generous for all kinds of different causes. And if I went through them all, like I said earlier, we wouldn't have any time. But in 2010, he and Rosalie, his wife, donated $12 million to VGH and UBC Hospital Foundation to create the Joseph and Rosalie Segal Family Health Center. And I think, I'm almost finished, Joe. I'm on the last page here. And I think, fortunately and unfortunately, Joe had, I think, a 12-night stay at VGH that time. And so it worked out to $1 million a night. And they wanted you to stay a couple of extra days, but I guess you wanted to get home. But Joe has been a terrific mentor, role model to countless folks. You've all got a copy of his book, Lunch with Joe, and I was extremely honored to be able to make a very small participation in that book. And Joe, we're just delighted you're here, and we look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I on? I can't. Oh, I'm supposed to turn it on. Sorry. Give me a sec. Oh, I think we're on. Hold on. Alice, is the other one on? Okay. Camera one. No. Anyway. Well, listen, thank you everybody so much for being here, and thank you very much, Graham and RBC. Can everybody hear the sound okay from these? Okay, excellent. Well, my name is Christina Anthony, and I'm the founder and the chair of the board of FWE, and very proud of all the entrepreneurs who've been involved in FWE, and so many of you are here today. And I'm just so, oh gosh, I don't want to get verklempt already, but it's so special to be able to sit here and interview someone who's become very important to me and a great mentor for me over the past several years, Joe Segal. And here we are, my friend. We talked about this a while ago and had a couple of bumps along the way.
So what's next?
Exactly. I don't know. Maybe we'll take Manhattan next. You never know. And, in addition to the questions that many of you submitted in advance, which make up the large part of today's interview, you all have cards on your chairs and pens. And so please feel free to write questions on there and kind of hand them down your rows. And volunteers, thank you, volunteers will be collecting these. So that's how you can participate actively in the conversation today as well. And Peter Legg is here. Thank you, Peter. Peter has helped us to supply and support supplying the books that you're all going to get today. And I think that'll be a great read for those who haven't read it yet over the coming days. It's a wonderful, wonderful book with some great contributions from people all over. And you'll learn even more about Joe than you'll learn today. So thank you, Peter. So, Joe, you're an incredibly successful businessman, a philanthropist, and you're incredibly successful as a family man. And everyone here knows and is interested in what you've accomplished. But why don't you tell us, how do you define success? What does success mean to Joe Segal?
Success, for me, is what I feel inwardly. You feel you've done the job or you haven't done the job. You feel you have completed it or you've left it incomplete. I'm not a one-man show. I have a wife. I've been married to her for 66 years. And I have to tell you, I never went to her to solicit advice. I went to her to make her be informed as to what I was going to do. And I wanted her, because she was my partner, to understand the ramifications of my success or failure. That's why we're still together 66 years. There's been no hidden agenda. And that applies to business too. There's no hidden agenda in business. If you can't put it on the table, you're not going to succeed. Now I have 4 kids, 2 sons, 2 daughters. Now when I started, they didn't exist. But then they grew, they went to school, and I had to make sure, when I got married, I said to myself, my obligation is to my wife. That's number 1. Then I had children. and my responsibility was to my children. So you have to make a sacrifice in everything in life. You want to take something out of it, you put something in. And I devoted my early years to being successful because I wanted to establish an environment for my kids. And I've done pretty well. I live like a king, and I'm not ashamed of it. But by the same token, what is a measurement of success? I see so many people that have nowhere to turn, no one to speak to. You know, if they need $1,000 and they go to the bank's not interested, it's too small. So they go to the credit union, and the credit union says, do you own a house? You build a reputation, you build a business on a solid foundation. That's where it starts. You can build the most magnificent house on sand, and the water comes along and the house disappears. So if you have a solid foundation, you build your house one brick at a time. And when it's finished, it stands the test of time. It used to be, what were the 3 bad wolves? But that's life. It's symbolic. So it's the same thing with the business. You build a reputation. If you're going to be building a business, you're an entrepreneur, and you know, what you should have said to me is, what is an entrepreneur? And I would give you my definition of an entrepreneur.
Okay.
But when you build a business, it's a two-way street. I can't think of any business where you can be successful without relating to A, the people you do business with, and B, the people that you employ. And then if you are cognizant of that fact, you know, this is my reach. I want to build a business. I want it to get a little bigger. I have to join hands. That's my employees. I join hands with my employees. The bigger the circle, the bigger the business. The weaker the circle, the less the business will endure. So you have to be sure that you build that circle with strong hands. And then it will sustain, and it will grow. It will flourish and grow. But then it requires leadership, and you have to say, is this of yesteryear? Or is this of today? Or is it of tomorrow? Yesterday's gone. We can't recreate it. Don't live in the past. Remember the past. Live in the present and look to the future. Not dream about the future, but look to the future. And you'll be successful. And never, ever worry about what you left behind. Worry about what's ahead of you. What you've got, what's ahead of you. And money is not... People have often said to me, what did you dream? What did you want to be when you were a kid? We were all kids at one time or another. You're still kids. What did you want to do? I had that question asked 1,000 times. What did you want to do? And if you don't know what you want to do, but you really want to do something, you want to be successful. All I wanted to do was be successful, whatever road that took me on. And if I was on a highway and I wasn't sure, and I came to a fork in the road, and one said Las Vegas 100A, and the other said Las Vegas 100, and I wasn't sure which one, and my wife would say it's 100A, and I would say, I don't think it's 100A, I think it's 100, but I'd take 100A because she said so. And I'd go down the road 10 miles, and I would stop at the first service station. And I would say, am I on the right road to Las Vegas? And the guy would say, yes, it'll get you there. but it's a crummy road, and it'll take you half an hour longer, even though it's a little shorter. Go back and take the other road, and you'll get there a half an hour sooner on a smooth road. That's what life is. That's what business is. Everything that you do, you have to have an open mind. And you know, being obstinate, trying to prove that you were right when you know you're wrong, that's failure. Making it right, that's success. So, what was the question?
It was about how you define success, and I think you did a beautiful job. And I think, you know, while it's hard for anyone to believe that you'd have had any failures given all of that, have you?
I have a little, no, you know, I'm only going to talk about the ones I really remember. I have a $2 bill sitting on my wall, a framed $2 bill. Now, I don't know how long it's been since we printed them, but this goes back. I think there's somebody in this room that worked for Robinson Ogilvy or something, somewhere.
Bill Gibson.
And I bought Robinson Ogilvy, which was a department store chain owned by the English. I don't know, maybe it was Liverpool or wherever. And I bought this company, and I put 2 guys in to run it. I had bought Collegiate Sporting Goods, which maybe none of you are familiar with, but it's now the Forzani Group. And when I sold Zellers to the Bay, I got a phone call from Imasco. Imasco was Imperial Tobacco Company. And it was from the president. And he said, you know, you've sold Zellers now, and we own a company called Collegiate in the sporting goods business. And he said, now that you've sold Zellers, maybe you would like to buy Collegiate. And I said to him, well, I don't ski, and I don't play golf, and I don't know anything about sporting goods. Yeah, but he said, maybe you can help us. I said, look, I'm not interested, but I'll come and look. He said, when are you coming? I said, tomorrow. I got on a plane, and I arrived in Toronto, maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock, and they picked me up and they took me to the Bristol Hotel. There's a hotel at the airport, Bristol Hotel, and they had a couple of war rooms showing me everything about the company. And I said, look, I don't need the statistics. I want to know the nuts and bolts, and I want to see your operation. And they said, okay, are you interested? I said, yes. Now, I went to their headquarters, and I used to smoke cigars years ago, and I love a cigar. And I went to the headquarters, and in the back end was an office. And in this office, the door was closed, and it was a haze of cigar smoke, and that was the president of the company behind the closed door. And this was like a 100,000 square foot distribution center in their head office. And this president would do all his notes and provide all his direction for all of the employees for the next day. Then he would go out and he would put the directions on their desk. And this is what I want you to do. But he never had any one-to-one contact. There was no rapport. And the people, there was no morale. And to be successful, you need morale. You need to keep these hands joined. You have to have people that want to be there. I bought the company. And I sold the company. I made a deal with I bought the company, and I got a call from Provigo. I don't know whether any of you ever have heard of Provigo, and they had Sports Experts, which was in the Maritimes. And I owned Collegiate, and I had a company called Arlington in Quebec. I got a phone call from the president of Sports Expert. He said, I want to see you. Can we talk? And I said, sure. I was commuting to Montreal, which I don't recommend for anyone. I don't mean Montreal, I mean commuting. And I met with him, Pierre Lazard, and he looked at me and he said, you have Arlington in Quebec. We have Sports Experts in the East. You have Collegiate in the West. Give us Arlington. Otherwise, we are going to open in the West. Now, Provigo had a lot more money than I had. You know, I was a fly speck on the balance sheet of Provigo. And I looked at him and I said, are you asking me or are you telling me? Well, he said, you take your choice. So I went home and I thought about it. And I needed the head office contribution from Arlington to keep Collegiate alive. You know, I bought a company that was losing their shirt and turned it around in 1 year from a huge loss to a $1 million profit. And I couldn't give up Arlington. But I didn't want to stay in Collegiate for the rest of my life. So how do I find a solution that's going to satisfy them and satisfy me and be mutually beneficial? So I picked up the phone to him. I said, I'll make a deal with you. We'll take Sports Experts, we'll take Collegiate, we'll merge the two. And at the end of 3 years, we will put a multiple on it, and at the end of 3 years, you can buy it at that multiple. And if I can't do the job and it doesn't produce a profit, you're going to get it free. And if I do a great job, you're going to pay for it. Which would you like? And in 3 years, they bought me out. But I had a couple of hot shots running that company, and they were really good. So I put them into Robinson when I bought the company. And I was tired of commuting, and I didn't go to look at it very often. That's another point. Never forget, out of sight, out of mind. You own a company, you got to manage it. So we owned a store, an Ogilvy store in Rideau Center, and we owned the real estate. And there was another retail company that had opened, pioneered in the fashion business. They were Europeans, and they wanted to buy Ogilvy's. And this is after we'd been running Ogilvy's for a few years. And so I said, okay, and I made a deal. And I got there, and these two hotshots that I put in to run this company pulled me aside. And they said, you know, I think you should know, we own a couple of Mercedes-Benz automobiles in the company, and we have this and we have that, and I did this and I did that, and they confessed, figuratively. And I said, well, does this buyer know? His name was Brenningmeyer, Derek Brenningmeyer. And they were huge people. And they said, no, that's why we're telling you. You tell them. So I sat down with Derek, and I said to Derek, you know, there's a little bit of stuff going on here that I'm not familiar with. And so you can buy the company and we'll adjust when we do an audited statement at the end of the year. And he said, just a minute. He said, I don't want to buy the company. I was tired of commuting and I didn't know what I had. So I said to Derek, if I give you the company, will you take it free? Will you gamble? Take it free. I don't know what's there. He said, yes. I said, well, one proviso. You bring me tomorrow the brand new $2 bill autographed by Derek Bennickmeyer, and it's your company. And he brought me a $2 bill, and it's autographed, and I have it on my wall. And so whenever I plan on doing anything foolish, I turn and I look at this reminder, because that $2 bill cost me probably $10 or $15 million. I don't know. So that's what it's all about. But you don't look back, you look ahead.
You look
What
ahead.
else?
Well, so last night as I was...
I don't want to bore anybody.
No, oh my gosh. Is anybody bored? Are you kidding me? So, Joe, last night I was preparing for today, and my 9-year-old daughter Victoria was listening, and she was asking me questions about you and reading over my notes, of course. And she said, Mom, you haven't asked him yet which of the companies he started that he bought were his favorite. You know, children, they'd like to know your favorite. So Victoria would like to know which of your companies that you've bought over your lifetime has been your favorite.
I've never had a favorite. I have one wife as my favorite. So you run a business, everybody evolves. A business evolves, and people evolve with the business, or they don't. If you evolve with the business and you love the business and you created something, then you look for another opportunity, because maybe you have outgrown the business. Maybe you want to move on, so you buy another business. And every business you fall in love with, or you wouldn't buy it. It's like going out on a date. You wouldn't go if you didn't love her. So I can't say. I bought Zellers. I went to the Bank of Montreal. There's one or two bankers here today, and they used to have a banker by the name of Bruce Campbell. Did you ever know him? To my banker. Now, I'm going back a lot of years. This is like 1976. Then I went to my banker and I said, I want to buy Zellers. And I had tried to buy Zellers, and the brokerage, I don't think it was DS, it was Green Shields at that time. And Green Shields said to me, who are you? And I said, well, I'm in the retail business. I own Fields. And he'd say, who the hell is Fields? Because Zellers had been shopped to every major retailer in the country, and nobody could understand anything, couldn't understand Zellers. And it had been established a long time, but Zellers had become an inbred company, and they were a subsidiary of a company called W.T. Grant, a U.S. company that went into Chapter 11. And Zellers were next, because Zellers were emulating W.T. Grant, because the orders came from W.T. Grant. So I had a store, a field store in Brentwood Shopping Center. Now there's always something, an omen. There's always something that tells you something. I had a 4,000 or a 6,000 square foot store, a 6,000 square foot store in Brentwood Shopping Center. And I had tried to get into Brentwood, and they said, forget it. They don't want you with a field store. It's too low end. And a month before the shopping center opened, they called me. Then they said, will you take the store? Because they couldn't lease it to anybody else. So I said, I'll take it. But you fixture it. And I'll put the merchandise in. And I'll open. And they did it, as long as I committed to open the store on time. So here I am sitting with a 6,000-foot field store doing $1 million a year in volume. Now, you know, in those days that was 180 a foot or 200 a foot, and it was big. And next door to me is a Zellers store, and it's 24,000 feet, 24,000 square feet, and it's doing 400,000 a year. And I couldn't understand how they could be so bad, because they're either so bad or I'm so great. And then Zellers went into being a subsidiary. They came on the market, and I tried to buy it, and nobody wanted to talk to me. And finally, when they couldn't sell it to anybody, I said, I'll buy it. And I phoned Bruce. I went to my banker, and they phoned Bruce Campbell, and he came out. He was a project guy, and he came out. And I said, I'm going to need $50 million. $50 million. That was a lot of money in 1976. And they said, we'll give it to you. And they gave me $50 million. But I couldn't buy Zellers without it being approved by the bankruptcy court in New York. And $50 million was the limit. If I had to pay $52 million, I wouldn't get it. I didn't have the money. So I got on a plane with my wife, Canadian Pacific Airlines, and it stopped in Winnipeg on its way to New York. And my wife stayed on the plane. I was with my lawyer, my wife, and myself. And I got off the plane in Winnipeg. And I sat in the lounge. And when you get off the plane, you can't get back on until they board. You can't walk on and off the plane. So I'm sitting in this lounge, and there's a couple of guys sitting next to me, and they're talking. And they're talking about Zellers. So my ears perked up. And they're on their way to New York to make a bid for Zellers. And that was the president of Gamble's Canada, which belonged to Gamble's Skogmo of the US, a huge conglomerate. And they own McLeod's, and they own Marshall Wells in Canada. So I knew there's something going on. Anyway, we arrived in New York. We went to the courtroom. They're there, we're there. The judge says, what's your bid? What's the bid? I had $52 million or whatever, give or take 100,000. And I said 30 million. And they said 34 million. I said 35 million. They said 38 million. I said to myself, I'm running out of money fast. So when we reached $40 million, I addressed the judge. And I said, Your Honor, I'm here to buy the company. And I'm prepared to write the check now. Can they write the check now? And the judge turned to them and said, can you write the check? They said, no, we have to have board approval. Now, you know, with a big corporation, it's got to go through the board. And so I said, the judge said to them, how long will that take? And they said about a week. So the judge turned to me and he said, will you give us a week? And I said, no. He said, will you give us 4 days? I said, no. He said, will you give us till tomorrow? So I said, I guess I have to. Now, fortunately, the chairman of the board of Campbell's Cogmo was fishing. So I got lucky. The judge looked at me and he said, I hope I never see you in this courtroom again. And I got the company. I got Zellers. And I was in Los Angeles. And I got on a plane from Los Angeles to fly to Montreal the day I took over Zellers. And that was the night of the PQ election. Then the PQ got elected. And I said to myself, this is either the worst deal I ever made or the best deal I ever made. We're going to see. And one thing evolved in another, and I couldn't speak a word of French, except high school French. But I went to Zellers. And you know what I did to make that company work? One simple little thing. I lifted the saran wrap and I let the company breathe, because it was so inbred, so suppressed, that if the president walked by, the people would stand to attention. You know, nobody could communicate with anybody, and everybody was doing their own thing. Lifted the saran wrap and let the company breathe. Allowed people to be expressive. Allowed people to take initiative. Allowed people, to be themselves. And that was the answer. And I took Zellers, I think you said I doubled the sales. I took Zellers from 350 million a year to 850 million a year in 3 years. Never opened a new store. Never opened a new store. When I arrived on the scene, they were giving up. They couldn't make a store work. They opened a new store at 70,000 square feet. The sales weren't there because they didn't have the merchandise. They didn't understand how to merchandise it, so they'd say the store is no good. So they would give the store to Canadian Tire for $2 a foot. And Canadian Tire made the store hum. First thing I did, I took this store that I told you about that was next door to me in Brentwood Shopping Center, next to my field store, and I said, we're going to have a project. We're going to fill that store. We're going to change the nature of that store. And we're going to make that store hum. And we did. I said to them, I want it done. They said, okay, we'll put it on the planning board and it'll be ready and we can do that in the next year. And I said, no, this is June. It's going to be open in September. We're going to do it for Christmas. It's going to get a measurement. That store, in the first full year of operation, did $2.5 million from $400,000. Was no miracle. You give the public what they want. You know, my wife used to say to me, I can't find anything for myself at a field store. And I would say, I'm happy. I don't need you as a customer. That's the way it was. You got to be objective. What else? We're going to run out of time.
Yeah, we're doing okay. So, you know, Joe, we've often heard about you that you have this uncanny ability to look at a business either like through its window, literally or figuratively, and make accurate statements about their financials. So when you're looking at a business, what goes through your head when you're analyzing it? Do you look for red flags? Are there some key things you look for? How do you do that so quickly and accurately, and you don't keep paper on your desk? I mean, like, how do you do it?
When you look at a financial statement, you don't look at it as if you're a banker. The banker wants to know, what's the escape? What are the assets? What's the liquidation value? You look at a business and you say, where are the opportunities? Where can I take this business? Do they understand their market? Are they servicing their market? Are they trying to be all things to all people? You know, in the